As you can probably already hear and feel and see, it's another beautiful morning here in the center of Delhi. I'm very close to Connaught Place right now. In fact, the lane that I'm walking on, or the road that I'm walking on, is called the Tolstoy Road. We've of course ventured in this area before, but my plan for today is to take a few turns that we've not taken before. This is one such turn. We've not explored the Atul Grove lane or the Atul Grove Road. It's actually common in New Delhi that you've got the same name used for a lane and a road. The Bhatiyas must be waking up to a wonderful central Delhi morning, New Delhi morning. Maybe they're having a delicious, nutritious New Delhi breakfast. And the reason this is 10 Tolstoy Marg is because looks like the Bhatiyas are very rich and they've got a corner property. Houses on this lane or generally in this area, they're really expensive. So the Bhatiyas house that we were looking at, or any house on this lane, I think it would cost you around, I guess, 100 crore rupees, that is. I think it'll be like 12-13 million dollars. So this is of course a very expensive part of the city. These lanes of New Delhi were of course built by the British in the early 1900s, or I should say roughly close to the mid 1900s, I would say 1920s, 30s, that's the rough timeline. And at that time, all of these roads, even the one that we are walking on right now, they had their British names. So, for instance, Janpat was not Janpat, it was called Queensway. Rajpath was called Kingsway. Similarly, most of the roads that we see in this area, they had those British names. But when I tried to find out, oh my god, Bhatiyas own this as well. Wow. So when I tried to find out what is the original British name of this road, I somehow could not find it. So I don't know. So Atul Grove is the only name that we can call this lane by. This is the Atul Grove lane. And as for the name Atul, there is some information available that there was a businessman from Bengal who was named Atul, but not a lot more than that. Growing here on its own, it seems. And all of you guys too. They've all come up from the earth or from the side of the wall on their own. So the Atul Grove lane is interesting. I see most of the properties on my left, they're not really much developed, whereas the ones on the right, they're more developed, and I see people are probably living in them as well. So maybe if you've got the money, you could just come here and buy a property for yourself. And maybe you could choose the property right opposite T35, because T35 also happens to be a Russian tank. T-35 was actually a Russian tank. It was developed around the Second World War, I think. but it wasn't used as much. So I think we are pretty much done with the Atul Grove lane and the road that we are meeting into now. This is the Atul Grove Road. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the roads and lanes here are named like that. For instance, there's Hailey Road and Hailey Lane, in fact not too far from here. Onto the Atul Grove Road now, and you can yourself see and also hear just how empty and quiet this road is. Of course, people would say this is very uncharacteristic of Delhi, but for this part of Delhi, you do find such peaceful roads and peaceful areas all over the place. Atul Grove Road, of course, as we mentioned earlier, is not really very clearly described in historical or journalistic articles, but what we do understand is that this road was named after a person who was called Atul Gupta. Atul Gupta was actually knighted by the British, and he was hence named Raja Sir Atul Gupta. I know it's a very interesting and a very long name, but Atul was supposed to be a very influential businessman, and that was how he was able to get a road on his name here in Delhi. Again, as I mentioned, there's not a lot written about this road, but that's what I could glean on the basis of a little bit of research that I did. In fact, I did it while walking just now. And PT Chamari is another very interesting institute. In fact, it stands for Postal and Telegraph Chamari. And Chamari was a place where unmarried males would actually stay. So at this PT Chamari, we would have had a lot of European workers or British workers who were working in the postal and telegraph industry, staying and living together, just as chums would. A chum is basically a close friend. Of course, there's a telegraph lane right next to the Post and Telegraph Chamari. So today, the Post and Telegraph Chamari, or the PNT Chamari, is of course not housing the postal and telegraph workers, because we don't really have that many workers to be housed anymore. So it's been converted into more of something which is residential and people just live here. But of course the building stands right here on the Atul Grove Road as a reminder of the past. Every single early morning that I step out into the city, I feel so calm and so relaxed and so inspired. I think that's probably the first automobile or the first traffic that we saw this morning. Because as I told you, these parts of New Delhi, they're really quiet and really calm. It's almost a very fulfilling experience when I come to these places. Look at that. You barely see people or see traffic. and you might as well just be walking right in the middle of the road. So the concept of roads for the traffic is really so sacred and sacrosanct, I would say, in the West. But it's not really true here in Delhi. The roads here are more shared and more communal, I would say. That's just by the road, really zooming into what we see by the roadside now. And of course we can, because it's such a peaceful and quiet morning. The Atul Grove Road meets into what's called the Hailey Road, and the first left turn on the Hailey Road is this. That's the Hailey Lane. You might know a very famous, or I should say a very now famous monument on the Hailey Lane. It's called the Agrasen Ki Bauli, and I've actually covered these areas in a very old video of mine. I mean relatively old. Maybe I'll add a link of it somewhere. And if you go deeper and deeper into the Hailey Lane, these are the visuals that you'll find. These are freshly washed linen, or bed linen, I should say, probably from the nearby hotels or hospitals in this area. So I think right in the middle of all these clean white linens, so it wasn't as close as it looked. As I mentioned earlier, the roads here in Delhi, they're definitely more communal. So yeah, from the middle of these beautiful, freshly washed bed sheets, I think I'll bid my goodbye for this morning. I'll catch you again very soon. Bye.